9 months pregnant, I refused my husband, William Pierce's, intimate advances, and he kicked me out of the house in the middle of the night. My best friend Ava Thompson took me in. That same night, I went into premature labor and collapsed on the floor, but Ava deliberately delayed calling an ambulance. Please don't blame me, Scarlett. Without you around, I can give William the child he wants. I've been the other woman for 3 years, and I can't take it anymore. She waited until I was hemorrhaging severely before finally calling for help. I lost my baby. While I grieved, Ava and William celebrated the arrival of their child. But months later, William lost his mind. In the final months of my pregnancy, William made advances towards me. After I turned him down, he threw me out of the house in the middle of the night. Cold, I had no choice but to seek shelter at my supposed best friend Ava's apartment downstairs. The stress triggered early labor, and excruciating pain ripped through my belly. With the baby already in breech position, the situation was dire. I collapsed onto the floor. I kept pounding on the door desperately, trying to get Ava's attention as she watched TV in the living room. Despite screaming at the top of my lungs, all I got in response was the TV volume getting louder and louder. Ava finally opened the door just as I was about to pass out from exhaustion. There was something unnervingly cold in her eyes as she smirked at my pitiful state. How stupid can you be? I'm your husband's mistress, and you came to me for help. What? I tried to push myself up, but she dug her heel into my hand, pinning it down. Between the labor pains and my crushed hand, I slowly lost consciousness. Just then, I heard my husband William's voice. Is she in labor? Yes, it looks like it. If she dies during childbirth, will the insurance pay out? Ava, being a top insurance sales agent, answered William's question with professional precision. Yes, the policy I recommended includes that coverage. And following my advice, Scarlett took out the maximum amount, with you as the beneficiary. I couldn't hear the rest of their conversation as violent tremors racked my body, the sensation of life slipping away, piercing every nerve. I have no idea how long they waited before finally calling an ambulance. Through my haze of consciousness, I felt Ava's breath on my ear as she whispered, "Don't blame me for this, Scarlett. Without you in the picture, I can give William children of my own. I've been the other woman for 3 years now, and I'm sick of it. It's time for you to step aside." As she spoke these words, tears welled up in her eyes. Red-eyed, she put on a show of sisterly devotion for the medical staff. My best friend came to stay with me late at night after discovering her husband's affair. We never expected it would upset the baby and trigger early labor. Poor thing. When her hot tear fell on my skin, I could only feel disgusted. The moment I arrived at the hospital, the obstetrics medical team rushed to save me. "The mother has been unconscious for too long. There's a high risk of fetal asphyxiation. We need to perform an emergency C-section immediately. Where are the family members?" "We need the family." William and his mother, Ashley Pierce, finally showed up at the last second before I was wheeled into surgery. Ashley immediately grabbed the doctor's sleeve. "Doctor, save the baby. You must save my grandson at all costs." The doctor gave a helpless smile. "According to medical ethics, the mother's life takes priority. I think you've watched too many TV dramas. We don't choose between saving the mother or the child here." Ashley let out an exasperated, "Oh," as if annoyed that the doctor wouldn't follow her demands. As the doctor was about to enter the operating room, she pushed past the nurse and grabbed his arm again. "Then let's do a natural birth. Squeezing the baby's head through the birth canal will make him smarter." The nurse rushed over and pulled her away. After an hour of emergency treatment, my baby lost his ability to breathe within 10 minutes after birth and died despite resuscitation attempts. I nearly lost my uterus in the process. Useless. Look at the worthless woman you married. I opposed this marriage from the start, and now she couldn't even keep the baby alive. Why didn't she die instead? Why did it have to be my grandson? I told them to save the baby. These doctors must be jealous that we're having a son. They did this on purpose. Ever since I regained consciousness, I hadn't known a moment of peace. Ashley's wailing was unbearable. William was nowhere to be seen. Late that night, I stumbled out of bed alone and made my way to the morgue to see my child, who hadn't yet been cremated. He was so tiny, impossible to tell whether he looked more like me or William. His little hands were tightly clenched. His skin had a faint purple tinge. During prenatal checkups, every doctor had said he was the healthiest baby. Throughout my pregnancy, he'd been like an angel, never causing me any trouble. He should have been born healthy, but because of Ava and his father, this was how it ended. I angrily pounded on the metal door. Finally, I slid down helplessly in front of it until a young nurse took me back. Just as we reached my hospital room door, I heard William's joyful voice. "Ava, you're pregnant? You really are." Ava replied with a laugh. "I just got checked. I'm 3 months along." "Ava, you're our family's savior. Son, hurry up and divorce that useless wife of yours. The doctor said she'll have trouble getting pregnant again after this. What's the point in keeping her around?" Ashley's voice was filled with excitement. She seemed to have already forgotten about her grandson's death moments ago. The nurse looked at me with pity and whispered, Would you like to go in now?" I nodded and pushed open the door. William was bent over, listening to Ava's belly, while Ashley pointed at Ava, declaring she could tell it was definitely a boy. They didn't even notice when I entered. Only Ava noticed me, her eyes suddenly turning red. "Scarlett, don't be angry." She walked over and grabbed my hand, trying to place it on her belly. "I know you just lost your baby, and you must be heartbroken. But think about it differently. What if the baby in my belly is your child reborn?" I struck her across the face. "Ava, don't think you're safe just because I can't prove you caused harm to me and my baby. You won't get away with this. Even if my child were to be reborn, their first act would be to take your life." William came over and kicked me brutally. If the young nurse hadn't pulled me away quickly, that kick could have left me half dead. "Sir, don't you realize your wife just had surgery? Are you trying to kill her?" The nurse shouted, trembling with anger. William always tried to keep up appearances in front of others, so he started explaining to the nurse that he just lost control in anger, and wasn't usually like this. We can call the police if you abuse a patient who just gave birth. After repeatedly apologizing, William saw the nurse out. The moment the door closed, he spun around and grabbed my throat. What kind of worthless baby were you carrying that died at full term? Tell me, were you sleeping around? This has never happened in the Pierce family before. It can't be my fault, so it must be yours. I watched with contempt as William desperately scrambled for an excuse to divorce me and let out a small, scornful laugh. William, if you want a divorce, just say it. No need to drag my name through the mud. Glad you understand. We'll handle the paperwork as soon as you're discharged. Ava can't wait any longer. He spoke with such entitled confidence. Looking at him holding Ava with such happiness, I smiled and said, "Then let me offer my early congratulations for your happiness." Ava's eyes instantly welled up at my words. "Scarlett, William and I are truly in love. There's nothing shameful about true love. You're the disgusting one," refusing to step aside and making snide remarks. William was about to criticize me further, but at that moment my parents arrived. My mom immediately slapped William across the face. "Look what you've done to my daughter. Divorce. We must get a divorce." Ashley walked over. "Your daughter's uterus is useless now anyway. We're more than happy to divorce her." My father stared at Ava for a long time. "Ava." He pointed, unable to speak for a while, then waved his hand dismissively. Forget it. Forget it. I must be blind." Years ago, after earning his first fortune, my father had chosen to sponsor a bright, well-behaved girl from his hometown for her education. Due to previous incidents where sponsored students had blackmailed their benefactors, the sponsorship was kept anonymous in one direction. My father knew who he was sponsoring, but Ava had no idea her sponsor was my father. That was why she didn't react much when my father spoke about this. But Ashley jumped in to defend her future daughter, putting her arm around Ava's shoulders. "Your daughter didn't have the luck. It's her own fault. My son is about to be promoted to vice president. When Ava marries into our family, she'll live the life of a privileged young madam. Your daughter, who knows if anyone will even want her. Promotion?" I saw my mother's face darken, and she let out a mocking laugh. William left with Ashley and Ava. After Mom closed the door, she said, "Looks like we made the right call back then, hiding our family's situation from them. At least we got to see their true colors quickly." Dad opened the soup he brought for me. Looking at my parents, I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. "Mom, Dad, you came all this way. I'm such an unfilial daughter, making you worry about me at a time like this. It's nothing. Your brother drove us here. He and Tiana went to get you some food. Don't worry, your family's here now. No one will bully you anymore." I nodded, big tears still falling onto my blanket. Mom hugged me tightly. "It's not your fault. William seemed so promising back then, but who could have guessed? In just 3 years he'd turn out like this." Dad opened his phone, initially looking for Kennedy, but the first thing he saw was Ava's social media post. "She's pregnant." I nodded, showing the number 3 with my fingers. Just then my brother's wife, Tiana Haven, walked in. "Who's pregnant?" "Ava, you've got to be kidding me." She put down her things, sat beside me, and picked up my medical chart. "It's not as serious as they're making it out to be," she said after examining me. "Your uterus is still functional, just a bit weakened. Once you've recovered, come to Tiana's hospital. We can treat this." Tiana was a distinguished OBGYN specialist. If I hadn't married William and moved away, I would have definitely chosen her hospital for my pregnancy. She gently pinched my cheek and said with sympathy, "Don't worry, having more children won't be a problem in the future. If anyone should be worried, it's William." My brother, Kennedy Haven, chimed in from behind. "William having kids with Ava?" Tiana threw her head back and laughed. "Now that would be a medical miracle." I looked between Kennedy and Tiana in confusion. "They can't have children together?" Search 81881 on Kiss app to read more.